Prabhu has emphasized the importance of book distribution and the concept behind why we make such a big push for distributing Prabhupada's books. So my specialty, on the other hand, is not to discuss philosophy exactly, because I'm sure that Hare Krishna Prabhu has covered the concept thoroughly.
तो जो philosophical part है, जो सिद्धांतिक विषय है, वो निश्चित रूप से ऋषि कृष्ण ने आपसे चर्चा की है। मैं उस विषय में चर्चा नहीं करूँगा।
So what I'm going to try to explain to you tonight is how to overcome objections.
मैं आपको आज बताऊँगा किस प्रकार से जो विरोध आते हैं, उससे हम कैसे ऊपर उठें।
And now there was a trick by Krishna when I was a Vanaprastha living in Los Angeles years ago, decades ago. I went to some professional sales training seminar, just the introduction, where they wanted to give appetite for paying $400 US for a 2-day weekend seminar, but I didn't have that kind of money.
तो मैं एक सेमिनार में गया था पिछले 10 साल पहले, तो वहाँ पे जो सेल्स करना, जो पुस्तकों का वितरण करना है, उसके विषय में एक प्रोफेशनल सेमिनार था उसमें।
But just in the introduction they gave, in order to interest people in taking the seminar, they gave a lot of information which I was present for, and that's what I'm going to pass on to you tonight.
तो उस सेमिनार में मुझे बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला था, तो उसी सारे जो महत्वपूर्ण शिक्षाएं हैं मैं आपसे शेयर करना चाहूँगा आज।
At that time, one of the top sales trainers in the world, his name was Zig Ziglar. A multi-millionaire, he made his millions of dollars off of teaching seminars how to sell. What I'm going to pass on to you tonight comes from his training. Now, it doesn't matter if you're selling cars, if you're selling mobile phones, or if you're selling real estate. The overall challenge that the salesperson faces is more or less the same. Of course, if you're trying to sell a piece of real estate that costs crores, it's more challenging than selling a mobile phone that costs 20,000. So what is the challenge that all salespeople face? Objections, isn't it? People don't want to part with their money. Even if they want to buy something, they don't want to part with their money creeping out there, attached. Even wealthy people are attached to their money. They don't want to part company with it. Everybody is like that. I'm not everybody, but the majority of people, if they have money, they're attached to it, and they don't want the money to go away, even if it's something they need. So the challenge of any salesperson is, how do you get them to part company with their money? That's what sales is all about. Of course, this case during Shastra Dan, we're more concerned about distributing Bhagavad-gitas than large quantities of money. Money is useful, of course. But at the same time, our primary concern is distributing the mercy of the Bhagavad-gita, Krishna, the words of the Supreme Lord. So, but there's still, you all know from your prior experience that you're going to face objections. For whoever it is you're trying to get to buy a Bhagavad-gita, you're going to run face to face with objections.
तो आपको बहुत सारे ऐसे ऑब्जेक्शंस आएंगे, चैलेंजेस आएंगे, संघर्ष आएगा जब आप पुस्तक का वितरण करोगे.
So generally, the first objection is, listen carefully, because I want to teach you. I want to teach you tonight what to say on the first, the series of objections that will come to you when you're trying to sell them Bhagavad-gita.
मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा आज की क्या-क्या ऑब्जेक्शंस आएंगे जब आप भगवद-गीता का इस प्रकार से वितरण करेंगे.
The first secret told by professional sales trainer is, you can't presume that you're going to close the sale on the first attempt. You can't, if you can close the sale on the first attempt, that's great.
तो पहली बार में आपका जो सेल अगर हो जाता है तो बहुत अच्छी बात है, लेकिन ऐसा नहीं है कि पहली बार में हो जाए.
But what they teach to professional sales trainers, what they teach is, on the average, you're going to close the sale after approximately third or fourth objection. If you have a notebook, please write it down. You have got a notebook, sir, write it down.
तो आप अपने जो पुस्तक की किताब लाएं, कॉपी लाएं, तो सब नोट कीजिए जो महाराज आपको बता रहे हैं.
You almost count on 3 or 4 objections before you close the sale. You can almost presume that's going to happen. Psychologically, you have to be ready for that.
तो आपको कम से कम 4 अटेम्प्ट्स करना, पहली बार में आपको क्लोज नहीं करना. जैसे आपने किसी को कुछ दिया वो नहीं लेना.
So
उसमें आपको क्लोज नहीं करना, कम से कम 3-4 अटेम्प्ट्स लगाने हैं, तब जाके अपने सेल्स है.
you're going out there sincerely and you want them to buy Bhagavad-gita. You want them to buy Bhagavad-gita. That's why you're talking to these people. Whether it's a home program or whether it is a business person.
तो चाहे घर में जाते हैं, किसी व्यापार से मिलते हैं, किस प्रकार के आप प्रयास कर सकते हैं.
So when you show that you're coming to sell them a Bhagavad-gita, the very first thing that they're going to say is, I already have Bhagavad-gita.
आप जब भगवद-गीता दोगे तो सबसे पहले चीज वो क्या बोलेंगे? मेरे पास भगवद-गीता है.
Thank you very much.
बहुत-बहुत धन्यवाद.
They're not going to say this, but the vibration is go, okay, I already have Bhagavad-gita, now get lost.
जनरली होता है कि भगवद-गीता बोलते हैं मेरे पास है, तब लगता है कि चलो इसको छोड़ो.
So here's the professional way to derail that.
यहाँ पे आपको प्रोफेशनली डील करना है कि
That's the first obvious objection. I already have Bhagavad-gita, I've had it for years.
तो पहला ऑब्जेक्शन आएगा कि मेरे घर में पहले से सालों से भगवद-गीता रखी हुई है.
They might even confess as gathering dust on their bookshelf or they're gathering dust in their basement.
तो आपको बुक सेल्फ के पास ले जाएंगे, बोलेंगे देखो मेरे भगवद-गीता रखी हुई है.
It's almost guaranteed they're going to say, I already have Bhagavad-gita.
वैसा कहीं नहीं, मेरे पास भगवद-गीता है.
You're supposed to, at that point, you're supposed to go away like a puppy. You step on the tail of a puppy, it goes, you know.
जैसे आप किसी पपी के पूंछ पे पैर रखें तो इस प्रकार की आवाज निकालते हैं जिसमें
They presume you're going to say, okay, sir, I'm very sorry, I didn't mean to bother you. You know, they presume you're going to react that way, isn't it?
तो उनको ऐसा लगता है अगर मैं ऐसा बोलूँगा कि मेरे पास भगवद-गीता है, हमारा रिएक्शन ऐसा होगा.
Now, please write this down. The next thing is essential in your book distribution. Essential. What they professional teach in sales training.
तो अभी जो महाराज बताएंगे उसका आप लिखिए, नोट कीजिए.
Whatever the client says, the customer says, is right. You never make them wrong. Whatever they say is good and right. This is a psychological necessary to take that position.
तो ये मनोवैज्ञानिक दृष्टिकोण से आपको देखना है कि जो भी वो बोलेंगे आपको बोलना बिल्कुल सही है. इसमें गलत नहीं बोलना, उसको बोलना बिल्कुल सही है. इस पोजीशन में आपको आना पड़ेगा.
Well, on your first attempt, you tried to sell them Bhagavad-gita. They say, no, not interested,
तो मान लो
or I already have it.
आपने बोला भगवद गीता लिया लीजिए, बोले नहीं मेरे इसमें रुचि नहीं है.
So they're trying very hard, not very hard, they presume they're slamming the door in your face, okay, now get lost.
तो वो ऐसा सोच रहे हैं कि आपका चेहरा उतर जाएगा, बदला जाओगे, आप वहाँ से चले जाओगे.
What you have to do is completely derail them from this way of thinking. You turn it around, you reverse it.
आपको उसको रिवर्स करना है. तो ऐसा उसके मनोवैज्ञानिक उसकी मानसिकता है, वैसे है इसका
When you reverse it, it completely confuses them. It disarms them. They don't know what to do.
अब जब ऐसा आप करोगे तो अपने आप को निहत्था पाते हैं.
So what do you say to disarm them?
तो आप क्या बोलोगे उस आर्गुमेंट के?
Instead of being disappointed and making a sad face, your tendency, human nature, tendency is to make a sad face. Oh, sorry. Okay, you have Bhagavad-gita. Okay, I guess we're done. That's a tendency.
ऐसे वृत्ति होती है कि हम मुंह लटका सकते हैं इस प्रकार से बोले स्वामी मैंने गलती कर दिया आपसे पूछ.
Now listen carefully, and if you can write it down, write it down.
आप ध्यानपूर्वक सुनिए, लिखिए उसे.
So instead of expressing disappointment whatsoever, or instead of making them wrong, no sir, you really should have taken, you should have said yes, you can't do this. That's not how it's done by professionals.
तो आपको इस प्रकार से उसको जवाब देना है कि नहीं आप ये लेने ही चाहिए.
They just said no to you. No, I'm not interested. I already have Bhagavad-gita. They just said that to you.
अगर ऐसा कहते हैं कि मेरे पास ऑलरेडी भगवद गीता है, मुझे भगवद गीता नहीं चाहिए.
Here's how you come back to that.
तब आपको कैसे आंसर देना है?
Overcoming the first objection, because every time that's going to be the first objection.
ये पहला ऑब्जेक्शन होता है जब लोग कहते हैं कि मेरे पास भगवद गीता ऑलरेडी है.
You come back. You have to come back with something very, very positive. You don't make them wrong. You come back with something very, very positive.
आपको जो सकारात्मक दृष्टिकोण से वापस आना है.
So they just turned you down. What do you say? They say, I already have Bhagavad-gita.
तो ऐसा कहते हैं कि मेरे पास भगवद गीता है.
You say, that's great.
आपको बोला है बहुत अच्छा है.
That means you already appreciate the value of Bhagavad-gita. If you already have Bhagavad-gita, that's wonderful. That's great.
इसका मतलब है कि आपको भगवद गीता का महत्व का पता है. ये बहुत अच्छी बात है.
They weren't supposed to say that in their book. You weren't supposed to say that.
तो ऐसा वो सोच भी नहीं सकता था कि आप ऐसा रिएक्ट करोगे.
You were supposed to give up at that point.
तो ऐसा सोच रहा था कि ये तो छोड़ के चला जाएगा यहाँ से.
So since you already appreciate the value of Bhagavad-gita, so wouldn't it, write it down on the screen, wouldn't it is a power word, these contractions, wouldn't it, couldn't it, isn't it. These words are power words for some mysterious reason are used in sales. Wouldn't it, couldn't it, isn't it, these contractions. So then you say, wouldn't it be wonderful if all your friends, relatives, and business colleagues could share your enthusiasm for Bhagavad Gita? Wouldn't it be wonderful?
तो आप कैसे बोल रहे हैं क्या ये अच्छा नहीं होगा कि आपके जो दोस्त हैं या आपके रिलेटिव्स हैं उनको आप हेल्प कर सकते हैं.
Of course you smile. You always have to smile.
और आप हमेशा एक मुस्कान अपने चेहरे पे.
Successful salespeople never show that they're worried about the end result. And if you show attachment to money or attachment to end result, they know that. They sense it. They become aware that you're attached. That is what we used to call a turn-off. That people don't like that. If they sense that you're attached to money or closing a sale, they don't like that. So you're throwing them off by saying, well, that's great, that's wonderful.
तो वो ऐसा सेंस कर लेते हैं कि आप पैसे शासक हो या मिस्ट्री शासक हो, लेकिन अगर आप देखो कि आप पैसे शासक नहीं हो, भगवान की गीता शासक हो, उसके प्रचार शासक हो, उस चीज को.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if all your friends and colleagues, business colleagues and relatives could share your enthusiasm for Bhagavad Gita? Wouldn't that be wonderful?
तो क्या ये अच्छा नहीं होगा कि आपके दोस्त, आपके परिजन, उनको भी ये भगवद गीता में संदेश मिले?
Can they say no to that?
क्या वो इस चीज का उत्तर ना बोलेंगे?
They can't say no, can they? They cannot say no, because that would be, they would be exposed as demoniac if they said no. They have to save face. You have them in a corner. They have to save face.
तो उनको अपना इज्जत भी बचानी है, अपना चेहरा भी बचाना है। अगर वो ना बोलते हैं तो उनकी आसुरिक प्रवृत्ति थोड़ी सी प्रवृत्ति।
There's no way they can say, no, it wouldn't be wonderful. They can't say that.
तो ऐसा बोल ही नहीं सकते कि ये अच्छा नहीं होगा।
So you have them in a jam already.
तो उसको आपने रोक दिया एक प्रकार से।
But then they quickly try to think, how can I get rid of this Hare Krishna who's trying to sell me books? They're thinking, how can I get rid of him, you know?
तो फिर वो सोचने हैं कैसे इस चीज का मैं किस प्रकार से उद्धार करूंगा।
So then they'll say, well, my relatives already have Bhagavad-gita. My business colleagues, I gave them Bhagavad-gita ages ago, and my friends, they all have Bhagavad-gita also. See, I got them now. They can't say anything.
तो ऐसा बोल सकता है कि हाँ मैंने रिलेटिव्स को, अपने परिजन को, जितने मेरे बिजनेस सर्कल्स के लोग, मैंने सबको भगवद गीता दे दी। उसको लगा चलो इससे हमारा पीछा छूट जाएगा।
Once again you say, that's wonderful, that's great.
फिर आपको बोला ये बहुत अच्छी बात है।
All your contacts already have Bhagavad-gita. Amazing.
कि आपके जितने भी जानकार हैं सबको भगवद गीता मिल गई।
Then you flatter them. Flattery works. At every opportunity, flatter them.
आप उसको मक्खन लगाएंगे।
Well, if all your friends and contacts already have a Bhagavad-gita, you've done some very valuable service. Smile.
आपके जितने भी जानकार हैं सबको आपने भगवद गीता दी है तो बहुत बड़ी सेवा की आपने। यह बोलते आपके
Once again, they're very disarmed. They're not sure. They thought they had your checkmate, you know, chess game. They thought they had your checkmate. They thought you had completely defeated. Instead, you're saying, well, that's really nice.
तो पहले उन्होंने सोचा था कि हम पीछा छुड़ा लेंगे, लेकिन आपके ऐसे उत्तर से वो फिर
They just said they already have Bhagavad-gita. So they just said they already have, their friends, relatives, and contacts already have Bhagavad-gita.
तो ऐसा बोलेंगे फ्रेंड्स रिलेटिव्स सबके पास भगवद गीता है।
So then you say, well, then they can distribute it. Wouldn't it be wonderful? Wouldn't it be wonderful if they could distribute Bhagavad-gita to all their friends, all their relatives, and all their work associates? Wouldn't that be wonderful? What are they supposed to say? No. They can't say no. They can't say no. They would be exposed as a demon if they said no.
फिर आपको आगे बोलना है कि ठीक है क्या ये अच्छा नहीं होगा कि आपके जो परिजन हैं, आपके जो जानकार हैं, जिनके पास भगवद गीता है, वो लोग भी भगवद गीता का आगे प्रचार करें, वो लोग भी भगवद गीता को वितरण करें अपने जानकार को। क्या ये अच्छा नहीं होगा? मतलब बहुत ही बैलेंस करके आपको बोलना है क्या ये अच्छा नहीं होगा। ना बोलते हैं इसका मतलब वो अपने आसुरिक प्रवृत्ति को प्रदर्शित करें।
They're still trying to scheme, how can they shut you down? How can they get you to walk out the door? They're trying to figure out, how can I get them to stop pressurizing me to buy Bhagavad-gitas? They're thinking, they're not sure how to stop you now because you've defeated them twice already.
तब उनको समझ नहीं आएगा कि वो किस प्रकार से आपको रोके, किस प्रकार से आपको बाहर का रास्ता दिखलाए।
So then you say, they say, well, my friends, relatives, and business associates, they already have Bhagavad-gita. They all have Bhagavad-gita.
ऐसा बोलेंगे मेरे फ्रेंड्स रिलेटिव्स सबके पास भगवद गीता है।
Well, that means all your friends, associates, and relatives, they're doing great because they have Bhagavad. They also know the value of Bhagavad-gita because of your good service. Compliment them.
तो आपकी ऐसी सेवा से आपके जो परिजन हैं वो भी इतने अच्छे बन गए हैं, बहुत अच्छी बात है।
Then you say, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could increase and share your enthusiasm? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wouldn't it? You see? You got that already there? Wouldn't it be wonderful? If they could share your enthusiasm, wouldn't that be wonderful? You see, they can't say no. So in sales, this reads as a yes. They can't say no, so it reads as yes. So that's your second or third yes already, you understand? It's subtle.
इस प्रकार से शेल्स का ये गुण होता है कि आपको बार-बार उस व्यक्ति से यस बोलना है। तब तक आपने 2-3 बार से यस हाँ बोलवा दिया।
They didn't say yes, I'll take your books, but you see, they can't say no. So if they can't say no, it means it's a yes. It's a psychology.
तो अगर वो ना नहीं कह रहे तो इसका मतलब वो हाँ कह रहे हैं.
So when they say, okay, my friends and relatives and business associates, they all have Bhagavad-gita already. So then, wouldn't it be wonderful if they can increase the number of Bhagavad-gitas that they can give to all their friends, all their relatives, and business associates? Wouldn't that be wonderful? They can't say no. They just can't.
तो वो ना नहीं बोल सकते जब आप ये बोलेंगे कि आपके जो परिजन हैं वो अपने परिजनों को और वो अपने जानकारों को जब भगवद गीता देंगे क्या ये अच्छा नहीं होगा क्या ये सही नहीं होगा.
So then you have to explain the philosophy. You could explain it earlier also. They're thinking, I don't want any more religion in my life. I have enough already. I got my Gopal at home. That's enough for me. That's how they're thinking.
तो वो ज़्यादा हो सकते हैं कि रिलीजन में धर्म की चीज़ों में ना जाते हैं उनके घर पास ऑलरेडी.
Please write this down. You need to distract them for the entire concept of religion. Get them off of thinking about religion.
धर्म के विषय में जो उनकी विचारधारा है उसको उनको नहीं लेके जाना आपको किसी और तरफ लेके जाना.
Because a business person, they're thinking, they will say to you, and I ran this by Karuna, who was going out and talking to business people.
हमारे बीच में भक्त हैं करुणा चंद्र वो व्यापारियों के पास जाते हैं जो
They have a stuck CD answer. Say, well, if I give to you, then I have to give to the Jains, and I have to give to the Swaminarayan people, and this person, this group, this religion, that religion. So we have our corporate policy. We just don't give to religion. See, that's how their way of thinking. That's why you have to distract them from the subject of religion. Write it down, please.
तो ऐसे बोल सकते हैं कि आप जैनियों को देते हैं, स्वामीनारायण को देते हैं, राधा स्वामी को देते हैं, सभी जगह देते हैं. इसलिए आपको ऐसा नहीं दिखाना है कि धार्मिक प्रकार की चीजें कुछ उससे बढ़कर.
What you want to get them to think is, you see, what we are trying to do is save the culture of India. Write it down, please. We're trying to save the culture of India.
आपको यह बोलना है कि हमें भारतवर्ष की संस्कृति की सुरक्षा करना, उसकी रक्षा करना.
It is being forgotten by the younger generations.
ये जो हमारी अभी की जो
Many of the youth of India today have never heard Bhagavad-gita, never heard even Mahabharata Ramayana. This is a sad truth. So many of the young people have not even heard it anymore.
आज के जो नई पीढ़ी के लोग हैं उनको अभी तक महाभारत रामायण की कुछ भी नहीं पता है, उन्होंने सुना ही नहीं.
Spiritual nationalism, call it spiritual nationalism.
आपको आध्यात्मिक
Write this down, please. Spiritual nationalism sells. Write it down. Spiritual nationalism sells.
देश की जो संस्कृति है, आध्यात्मिक संस्कृति है, उसकी रक्षा करनी है.
You tell them, we have to have pride in our nation. You're talking like a politician. We have to have pride in our nation.
तो हमें अपने देश की जो संस्कृति है उसकी रक्षा करनी है. ऐसा आपको जैसे राजनेता बोलते हैं ना कि हमें अपने देश की रक्षा करनी है.
We have to have pride in our history and our culture, isn't it? Again, see, isn't it? You have that there already. We have to have pride in our culture, our history, and our nation, isn't it?
हमें अपनी संस्कृति, हमें अपने देश पर गर्व होना चाहिए.
You got them bad, right? You got them badly right now. They cannot say no to nationalism. They can't say no to nationalism. You see, they can't. So already they're in a very awkward space at this point. You might wonder, does this really work? This approach? I don't know if you remember or not. You probably don't remember. It was about 7 years ago. I was sent out to a high school with about 400 students to give a talk during Gita Jayanti. Do you remember? You do remember. There were 400 students. I gave this talk. I said nothing about Krishna. I said nothing about religion whatsoever, because I knew that they were all programmed in modern secular conception, which is atheism basically, modern secular you know, these are modern times, we don't need old books anymore. This conception, they're poisoned with that conception, you see. Now the whole nation has been contaminated by that conception.
अभी के जो आधुनिक धर्म निरपेक्षता के जरिए से हमारे बच्चे पूर्ण रूप से प्रदूषित हो चुके हैं। जब भी उनको धर्म की बातें करो, गीता की बातें करो, तो उनको गलत ही समझ में आता है।
So I stood on the stage and I said, you have to have pride in your culture. You have to have pride. It is the greatest culture in the world, right, just now. It's the greatest culture in the world. You have to have pride in your culture. There's no greater culture in the world.
विश्व में सबसे उन्नत है और इस संस्कृति में हमें गर्व होना चाहिए।
This is a classic. This Bhagavad-gita is a classic. It's more famous than the famous Greek classics. Some educated class, they know about this.
तो यूनानी संस्कृति के जो कुछ पुस्तकें हैं उससे भी काफी अच्छी है भगवद गीता।
Greek classics means Homer, Aristotle, Socrates, the big Greek philosophers. In the West it's common. In India, the educated class, they know something about it.
यूनानी संस्कृति में जैसे होमर, सोक्रेटिस, अरिस्टो इस प्रकार के जो लोग हैं उनसे भी काफी उन्नत हमारी भारतीय।
Because Bhagavad Gita is the most ancient spiritual text in the history of the world. It's much older than the other cultures.
तो पूरे विश्व के इतिहास में जो सबसे ऐतिहासिक पुस्तक है वो भगवद गीता है।
So if they try to say that, no, my associates will never be interested in more Bhagavad Gitas, they try to turn you down one more time. But you stress on this importance, we have to do something to save our culture.
आपको इस बिंदु पे बारंबार उठाघात करना पड़ेगा, इस चीज पे स्ट्रेस डालना पड़ेगा कि हमारी संस्कृति की रक्षा इसी भांति होगी भगवद गीता का प्रचार करके। अपनी संस्कृति की रक्षा करनी है। जो आधुनिकीकरण के जो लोग परेशान हैं, जो दुखी हैं, उससे अपने बच्चों को हमें बचाना है। यह सब बार-बार आपको संस्कृति, भारतीय संस्कृति बोल करके उनको गीता देनी।
Then you flatter them again. You're so fortunate, Mr. Joshi. By the way, in professional sales training they teach, say the name of the person frequently. Call them by their name.
आपको उस व्यक्ति का नाम पहले से पता कर लेना है और बार-बार उस व्यक्ति का नाम बोलना है, नाम पुकार करके उससे बात करनी है।
This is what the professional sales trainer teaches. Nothing sweeter than their own name. This is what the sales trainer teach.
अपने नाम से प्यारा और कुछ भी प्यारा नहीं होता है।
So the more often you say Mr. Joshi, the more likely they are to take some Bhagavad Gitas. This is a sales psychology.
जितने बार उसका नाम लोगे उतना उसका चलेगा और बहुत जल्दी उसका चलेगा।
So if they try to say, no, my friends and my business associates, they have got already Bhagavad Gita, they're not interested, and they try to shut you down with that, they're not interested, they won't be interested.
बार-बार वो अरुचिकर तरीके से आपको इग्नोर करने का प्रयास करेगा।
Next you say, you mean to say they're not interested in saving the culture of India? You have to confront them at that point. You mean say they're not interested in saving the culture of India? It has nothing to do with religion, nothing to do with Krishna, supposedly.
आपको अभी धर्म के कृष्ण के उससे कुछ नहीं करना, आपको बस भारतीय संस्कृति की बात। आप ये बोल रहे हैं कि क्या वो भारतीय संस्कृति की रक्षा करने के लिए उत्साहित नहीं होंगे?
Once again, they can't say no because they would not want to admit that they have any friends and contacts that are family that are demons. They wouldn't want to admit that, so they have to say, well, yes, I think that some of them will be interested in saving the culture of India. You know, you're softening up. They're softening up because they can't say no. No, they won't be interested in saving the culture of India. They can't say that. Well, that's wonderful, Mr. Joshi. That's wonderful. So then you say, so I'll put you down for 20 cases. 20 cases. Then write this down. Another power phrase used in professional sales. Fair enough. It's a power phrase. Fair enough.
Fair enough. क्या ये ठीक है मिस्टर जोशी? मैं आपके नाम के आगे 20 पेटी भगवद गीता लिखता हूँ। क्या ये ठीक है?
It's a magical power phrase used by the top salespeople.
क्या ये सौदा बिल्कुल ठीक ठाक है?
Why does it work? Because it takes a lot of energy to say no against that. You understand? Fair enough. They're not going to say, no, it's not fair. They can't say that.
तो ऐसा बोल ही नहीं सकते ये ठीक नहीं है।
So then, I'll put you down for 20 cases.
तो मैं 20 पेटी भगवद गीता आपके नाम पे।
Fair enough. Let's say, 20 cases of Bhagavad-gita, you got to be joking, no way.
तो ऐसा बोलना है तो बोल सकता है कि 20 पेटी भगवद गीता बहुत ही जाता है, मुझे नहीं करना।
We say, sir, well, I know you don't need in your basement 20 cases of Bhagavad-gita. I know that.
तो आपको बोलना है मुझे पता है कि आप 20 पेटी भगवद गीता अपने बेसमेंट में नहीं रख सकते।
But you can also distribute them. This is very important. Open market. You say, Mr. Joshi, you're a businessman. I know you understand about business and marketing. Flattery.
तो उसको बोलना है कि आप व्यापारी हैं, आपको पता है किस प्रकार की मार्केटिंग की जाती है, कैसे बिजनेस किया जाता है।
So, if you distribute 20 cases of Bhagavad Gita, let me explain to you where you can distribute them. They're not going to sit in your basement, don't worry.
तो उनको यह समझाना है कि अगर आप 20 पेटी भगवद गीता लेते हो तो आपके बेसमेंट में रखा नहीं रहेगा। मैं आपको बताता हूँ कि वो भगवद गीता।
This is now a true statement. There are so many schools, universities, jails, and other institutions in the Delhi area alone that were eager to receive Bhagavad Gitas. That's a fact. That's not a lie. It's not a stretching truth. They're eager to get them.
यहाँ पर बहुत सारे स्कूल्स हैं, बहुत सारे कॉलेजेस हैं, बहुत सारे जेल हैं, बहुत सारे कारागार हैं, जहाँ पर लोग इंतजार कर रहे हैं कि उनके हाथ में कोई भगवद गीता दे।
How do we know? The students are eager to get them. We distribute thousands and thousands of Bhagavad Gitas to students. But the area, here's a business term they know, say, so Mr. Joshi, you see, the area is not saturated with Bhagavad Gita. Saturated is a professional, write it down. Saturated is a professional business term. It means like a sponge, there's only so much water you can put in a sponge. Saturated means everybody in the city already has Bhagavad Gita. Actually, it's not true. It's not true.
कई बार लोगों को लगता है कि बस अब हो चुका है, अब और कुछ ज़्यादा भगवद गीता देने की आवश्यकता नहीं है।
But they might try to convince you, paint a picture it's already true. Everybody has Bhagavad Gita. It's not true. Not true.
जैसे स्पंज में आप पानी डालते जाओगे तो बस उसका एक हाथ वाला पानी नहीं डाल सकते। तो लोगों को लगता है कि बहुत सारी भगवद गीता जा चुकी है, वो डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन बहुत हो चुका है, अब डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन का।
Well, Mr. Joshi, you know that in schools there's a high turnover. There's a turnover every few months in the schools because the senior students graduate, new students come in. It's a fresh market every time. He can't say no. Can't say no. He's a businessman. Mr. Joshi, you understand the principle. It's a fresh market every time because of the high turnover and students. He can't say no. He's a businessman. You understand this point, Mr. Joshi, because you're a successful businessman. Flattery.
फिर से उसको बोलना है कि आप चूंकि एक सफल व्यापारी हैं, सफल बिजनेसमैन हैं, तो आपको ये पता ही होगा कि स्कूल में हर एक साल नए नए बच्चे आते हैं। जो बच्चे बड़े होते हैं, ग्रेजुएट होकर बाहर चले जाते हैं, फिर अगले साल नए बच्चे आते हैं। तो उन तक भी हमें भगवद गीता पहुँचाना है।
In this way, Mr. Joshi, you can easily distribute 20 cases of Bhagavad Gita, easily, as a community service. Power phrase, write it down. As a community service, Mr. Joshi, you can easily then distribute 20 cases of Bhagavad Gita, easily.
इस समाज की सेवा के लिए मिस्टर जोशी आप बहुत ही आसानी से 20 पेटी तो कुछ भी नहीं है, डिस्ट्रीब्यूट कर सकते हैं।
Schools, jails, universities,
स्कूल में
and also Rotary clubs, community clubs, Rotary, Kiwanis, these kind of clubs. They can also, you can give them the books and they'll distribute. They're charity organizations, they will also distribute. And they also have unending market in all directions. And they would love to do it as a service, as a community service. They're called service organizations.
Rotary clubs हैं, schools हैं, colleges हैं, बहुत सारे ऐसे जगह हैं जहाँ पे हम भगवद गीता को बांट सकते हैं।
So Mr. Joshi, I'll put you down for 20 cases. Now you understand how you can distribute 20 cases, right, Mr. Joshi? Smile. Then Mr. Joshi says, no, 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 I can't do 20 cases, I can't do 20 cases. Okay, I understand, Mr. Joshi. No problem, I understand. I'll put you down for 15 cases. Fair enough. He just dropped the number 15 cases. I'll put you down for 15 cases. You know what? He might agree. He actually might agree. If he's pious, he might agree. If he still says, no, 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 I'm not going to do that. You don't argue with the man. You don't argue. It could be a woman also. You don't argue with them. Remember, the client is always right. You don't argue with them. If they won't take 15 cases, all right, Mr. Joshi, I understand. You understand their mentality. They're creeping up, but never. You don't say that. Oh, I understand, Mr. Joshi. So then, I'll put you down for 10 cases of Bhagavad-Gita. आपको पता है कि उनकी क्या मानसिकता है कि वो कंजूस हैं, लेकिन इस चीज़ का आपको बोलना नहीं उनके आगे। इसलिए बोला मिस्टर जोशी, मुझे आपको समझ पा रहा हूँ, ठीक है, आप ऐसा कीजिए, 10 पेटी भगवद-गीता लीजिए। Try to understand, some of them will actually take 10 cases. Don't think they won't. Don't think they won't. तो उसमें से कई लोग ऐसे होंगे जो 20 पेटी भगवद-गीता डायरेक्ट कर देंगे, ऐसा मत समझिए। I'll give you an example. I went to a home program once about 6 years ago. And there was a young man that was a devotee. But his father was an older man, and he was a little hostile to Iskcon because he thought Iskcon was after money. And that's what I was told. Nobody told me I had Krishna's trick. Nobody informed me before I went to the engagement. I was told that after I'd gone to the engagement. So I gave this talk on spiritual nationalism and preserving the heritage and culture of India. That was my whole talk, spiritual nationalism. We have to save the culture of India before it's too late. This is the greatest classic. That was my talk. I didn't say anything about Krishna, I didn't say anything about religion, nothing. There were about 25 people attending that home program. Out of 25 people, I took pledges for 13 cases in one evening. 13 cases of Bhagavad-Gita is right there in one living room at one program. I took the pledges. That's 3,900 Bhagavad-Gitas in one pop. You understand now? I've done it as an instrument of Prabhupada, mercy of Prabhupada, mercy of Krishna. I've done it. I'm not blowing hot air is my point. It's doable is my point. I've done it, you see. At that high school program, there were 400 students. After I gave my talk explaining how they need to save the culture of India, the 400 students, 1 out of 4 took home a Bhagavad-Gita right from the stage. They came up with their lunch money or whatever. They had enough money on them. There was a devotees had a stack of Bhagavad-Gitas on the side of the stage, and they came out one after another. I took pledges for 90 Bhagavad-Gitas. 90 Bhagavad-Gitas in a half hour. It's real. I'm not bluffing. Actually, the devotees that had come to the program with me, they weren't ready. They weren't ready for that. They hadn't brought enough Bhagavad-gitas. They had never expected that as an instrument prophet I could take pledges, sell so many Bhagavad-gitas. They were caught off guard. Do you remember? Were you there? Somebody had to send the car back to the temple high speed and get more Gitas. They didn't have 90 Gitas with them. It never crossed their mind that I could sell 90 Gitas in half an hour. Never crossed their mind. So the point is, it's doable, it's realistic. I'm not just presenting to you something theoretical. So if Mr. Joshi won't take 10 cases of Bhagavad-gita, then all right, Mr. Joshi, I understand. You always understand. You're sympathetic. All right, I understand, Mr. Joshi. Then I'll put you down for 5 cases of Bhagavad-gitas. I won't go any lower. Fair enough? They might go, okay. Now once again I'll tell you that there's one gentleman, pious gentleman, Mr. Jain, I don't know if you know who he is. Mr. Jain, he has his company, I think life insurance or something. His company, his office, and his house are all in the same complex. Mr. Jain.
Mr. Jain, ek bhakt hai.
I gave this spiritual nationalism talk about saving the culture of India. I walked away with a check for 50,000 rupees. It works, is my point. I walked away with a check in my hand for 50,000 rupees. That's not bad. You remember? This is real. I'm not telling a lie. It's a real story, real history. So then 5 cases, the point is they'll feel, okay, you started at 20 cases, if they can walk away with pledges for 5 cases, they'll feel they're getting off easy. Or even if you have to go lower than 5 cases, you see the point is 5 times 30 is 1,500, or isn't it? 100. 5 times, no, it's 150, huh? 150 Bhagavad-gitas in one pop. If you go out on the streets trying to stop cars and all that, if you're not at a Rath Yatra festival, it's very difficult. If you could sell 30 Gitas in one day out on the streets, you'll consider you did good. Here, in this, I'm showing you how that you could walk away with 1,500 Gitas in a 45-minute presentation.
तो हो सकता है कि आप one-to-one distribution करें तो एक-एक करके आप पूरे महीने 30 गीता, 40 गीता, 100 गीता इस प्रकार से कर सकते हैं. लेकिन अगर आप इस प्रकार से प्रयास करें कि पेटी
all about pride in Indian culture. That's what it's the theme.
तो यह भारतीय संस्कृति की रक्षा करनी है सब.
Anybody have any questions?
किसी को प्रश्न है?
Comments? So try to understand it's doable. I have given you examples where I've done it myself, and so please try this. Try to remember this language which is written on the board, and you'll be bound to successful. Now Sharanagati Prabhu, he has, last year I coached his group on these techniques that I've explained to you tonight. His group sold the most Bhagavad-gitas last year during the marathon because they followed their these instructions that I gave, these hints that I gave. His group followed, and therefore they were the top distributors.
So group ने ऐसे tips को follow किया और पिछले साल तो number 1 group था.
Now there's one university professor this week, I'm sure he'll be coming to the programs. There was one university professor who personally distributed, he sold 3,000 person, the university professor is amazing. He, devotee, he personally sold 3,000 Gitas.
तो एक प्रोफेसर है हमारे समुदाय में जिन्होंने पर्सनली 3,000 भगवद गीता डिस्ट्रीब्यूट
He attended one of my seminars over there.
और उसको उन्होंने ये सेमिनार्स पर कार्यक्रम
So you can do the same thing.
आप भी जो भी टिप्स बताए हैं उसका ट्राई कीजिए.
Buy the case. It's easier than selling in the streets. Selling a case in somebody's home is easier, or a business is easier than selling in the streets. Really it is. So if you know friends, relatives, or business contacts, you contact them and you do home program, and you make this cultural presentation with the theme Saving the Culture of India. Okay? Thank you very much for your time. Best of good luck to you all. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Radhe Shyam, Jai Prabhupada. Okay.